Yeah, we were discussing about exception handling. What is meant by exception handling? What is exception before that? Exception is nothing but uh, that is runtime error. Exception is runtime error. Now we have error is nothing but a mistake. Error is nothing but a mistake. See, there are three types of errors. We have discussed: syntax error, runtime error, logical error. Syntax error, logical error, syntax error, runtime error, logical error. Syntax error in a sense, as per the programming language, if we are not following any rules of that particular programming language, it is going to give the error. That error is called as syntax error. That is going to be give that is going to give during compilation time. Because of that, we are going to be say that is a compile time error. We are going to be say that is a compile time error. Now, if you see runtime error or execution error, grammatically there is no mistake. Grammatically there is no mistake. It is executing fine. Sorry, grammatically there is no mistake. It is running successfully. It is running successfully. But during execution time, whenever we are providing the input, based on the input, sometimes it is going to be give the error. During execution time, sometimes it is going to be provide the error. So that error is called as runtime error, which also called as exception, Logical error. What is meant by logical error? Logic mistake. We cannot able to identify that easily. It will take more time for identifying the logical mistake, because we are getting the output, but that output is not our expected one. Then we have to go with the logic where we are getting the output. Based on that, where we are getting the mistake, that we have to check. Okay, see, we have discussed some examples yesterday where we are getting the exception. If you are getting the exception, it will interrupt the program execution flow. If you are getting the exception, it is going to be interrupt the program execution flow. And rest of the statements what we have after that will not execute those instructions. See, suppose in this particular statement, it is raising the exception. When it is raising the exception in this particular case, it will not execute the rest of the statements. If it is not raising an exception, everything in the program is going to be get executed for us. See, in the previous program as well, here we are going to be get the exception. See, it is going to be, this example is going to be execute perfectly all the instructions because there is no exception. So here we are going to be get the exception sometimes when we are providing the n2 as 0. When we are dividing a number with 0, in that particular moment it is going to be raise the exception, that is error, which is called as exception. Then next, whatever the statements we have, that is not going to be executed. Whatever the statements we have, it is not going to be executed. See here, what is exception? Which is an event that is going to be interrupts the normal flow of program, normal execution of a program. During execution, it is going to be through the error. So I have provided the example. If the user is typing the second number as 0, whenever a number is dividing with 0, it is going to be through the exception. Mathematically, it is not going to be give exception. It will give undefined. When we are dividing a number with 0, it is going to be considered as undefined. But here we will not get any undefined. It is going to be through the error. See, exception handling. For what purpose we have to handle the exception? If in our program 10 lines of instructions we have, in the 10 lines of instruction, while executing, at the 5th instruction, it is raising an error. At the 5th instruction, it is raising an error. When it is raising the error, that is a exception, runtime error, remaining instructions from 6th to 10th, it will not execute. It will stops the execution of that. It will interrupt the execution flow and it makes the control to come out from the particular block, a particular program itself. So some exceptions will be like class not found exception, IO exception, SQL exception, remote exception. What is that exception? We will be discussing in the coming session. See, types of exceptions. We have 3 types of exceptions. One is checked exception, unchecked exception, error. Types of exceptions: checked exception, unchecked exception, error. See, input output exception, SQL exception, these are all exceptions we are going to be say as checked exception, which are going to be checked at compile time. See, they will directly inherit from the throwable class. What is that? We will see. Except runtime exception and error, we are calling those are checked exception, like IO exception, SQL exception, and checked exception. See, these are all checked exceptions which are going to be checked at compile time. Unchecked exception, which is going to be inherit the runtime exceptions. Example, the arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, array index out of bounds exception. In previous sessions, we have seen arithmetic exception, array index out of bounds exception, which are comes under the unchecked exceptions, which are not going to be checked during compilation time. During execution time only, we are going to be check the during execution time only it is going to be checked. During compilation time, it will not check. Error is some mistake, out of memory error, assertion error, we'll see that. See, in the previous session, when we are discussing this, it is going to be raise this error. See, what is the error it is going to raise? Array index out of bounds exception. Array index out of bounds exception. See, array size we have given as 5. Array size we have given as 5, but we are trying to enter the element in the 5th position as well. We are trying to insert the element in the 6th position as well. Because array size is 5. Array size is 5. We are starting the indexing from 0 to 5. So 5 elements, sorry, 0 to 4. 5 elements it is going to be stored. And the 5th element, when we are trying to insert, we are going to be get the error. That is, exception occurs. What is that exception? Java.language.array index out of bounds exception. What type of exception it is? Unchecked exception. During execution time, it is going to be raise the exception. Because of that, we are going to be say that is a array index out of bounds exception. That is what we can say as unchecked exception. So this is also when we are providing the correct input, when it is asking 10 and 2, we are getting the division result as 5. Correctly, we are going to get the result. Okay, fine. Now, whenever I am executing, one more time. So previously when we run, it is executing correctly, and what the output we are expecting, we are getting. So now in this case, 0 we have provided as a second argument, second input. So 10 divided by 0, it is going to be raise the error. When it is raising the error, this particular line, the error is going to be raised. Rest of the statements, this part is not going to be executed. What is this exception? Arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception divided by 0. Arithmetic exception divided by 0. Because of that, we are going to be get the interruption here. When it is going to be interrupts, we are going to be the control will comes out of the block or the program. It will not execute the rest of the statements. If it is not raising an exception, it is going to be execute everything. Now, if you see here also, if it is raising the exception in this particular statements, a remaining part of the code will not execute. It will interrupt the program execution flow and it makes the control to come out from the particular block. See, in the previous examples, like when we have discussed about buffer reading, buffer reading concept, when we discuss, yeah, number format exception, IO exception. What is this? Why we are getting this? We'll talk later. See, these are throwable exceptions because we are going to be check these two are checked exceptions. These are checked exceptions. Number format exceptions. Why we are throwing there, that we will discuss later. IO exception, number format exceptions are unchecked, checked exceptions. Which are going to be reported at during compilation time. Check that. Compilation time. Check that. Compilation. See? Number format exception, IO exception. IO exception is input output related things. IO exception is input output related things. Number format exceptions. Okay. And now, if you see here, array index out of bounds exception is a unchecked exception. Is an unchecked exception, which is will get at runtime. Okay. So checked exception, unchecked exception. So IO exception and SQL exception. SQL exception, when we are connecting with the SQL, that moment we are going to be get the error. That whatever number format exceptions, these are all will be comes under the checked. During compilation time, it is going to be checked. And if the exception it is going to be raised? Arithmetic exception. Divided by 0 is arithmetic exception, which is going to be reported during runtime. Occurs during runtime. So called exception. Okay. Example for exceptions. Example for checked. Example for unchecked exception. Okay. So what is checked exception? Unchecked exception. Errors. The errors will be getting irrecoverable. Okay. Out of memory error, virtual machine error. This we'll see in the coming sessions. Now we have discussed what is checked exception, what is unchecked exceptions, and its related examples as well. Now, see, when we are getting the exception, that exception we have to handle. That exception we have to handle. Why we have to handle the exception? Why we have to handle the exception? See, whenever we have 10 instructions in the program to execute, in one program, sorry, in one program, if we have 10 instructions to execute, somewhere in the fourth instruction, we are getting the exception. Remaining statements, it is not going to be executed. Remaining statements, it is not going to be executed. So for handling the exception, at least if we have doubt with the fourth instruction, it may raise the error. At least we have to make the rest of the statements to be executed. Fourth instruction is going to be raise the error. Instead of disrupting remaining flow of program, we have to make that work. For that only we are handling the exception. For that we have the keywords called as these 5 keywords which is used for handling the exception. Try, catch, finally, throw, throws. So first, what is meant by try catch, try block? See, whichever the code we are filling that there is a chance of getting exception. whichever we are feeling there is a chance of getting exception. That part of code we are going to be placed in the try block. Whichever the part of code we are feeling that there is a chance of getting an exception, that part of code we are going to be placed in the try block. If it is raising exception, something has to be executed. For that, immediately after writing the try block, we are going to be write the catch block. Immediately after writing the try block, we are going to be write the catch block. Okay. See, if you are writing try and not writing catch block, since it will give the error. What is the why we have to write immediately after writing try catch sense? If the code what we have written in the try block is raising an exception, then catch block will execute. If the code what we have written in the try block is not raising an exception, catch block will not execute. The code what we have written in the try block is raising an exception, then only the catch block is going to be executed. Otherwise, the catch block will not be executed. We'll see that. See, public static void main. Now here, I'll be taking scanner class. Scanner class package I have imported. I'll be declaring variables num1, num2, result. Enter two numbers. I'm giving the content. Okay, fine. Now, num1 will be getting see, result will be num1 divided by num2. Okay. Will be getting. Now, see, when we are executing this part of code, when we are executing this part of code, when we are having see, two numbers 10 and 5 I've entered, we are getting perfectly all the instructions is executing. If suppose have entered 10, 0, see, 10 is accepting into num1. When I'm giving 0, that 0 is going to be accepted to num2 as well. But while performing the division 10 divided by 0, it is raising the exception. Because of that only, it is not going to be display this statement to be executed. So what I'm going to do now, in the try block, this part I have doubt. So actually only this part of code I have doubt. It is raising the exception or not. Sometimes based on the input, it is going to be raise the exception. Sometimes it is not going to be raise the exception. Okay, fine. I've done that. If it is not raising an exception, it has to be display the output. For that, I have written that. See, still we are getting error. What is that error? So we have to write the catch block. Immediately after writing the try, we have to write the catch block. See, I know here there is a chance of getting the arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception. For the arithmetic exception, AE is the object I have given. This object is our wish. Arithmetic exception. Import java.language.arithmetic exception. There it is. Exception. We don't know what exception it is going to be raised. Simply have created exception we have written. So we are going to be print this. We don't know what exception is going to be raised. So if I'm giving, that is the object of the exception we have written here. And this statement will execute without any interruption. This statement will execute without any interruption. See, first I'll be giving perfectly. The try block code is not going to be raise any exception in this case. Try block code is not going to be raise any exception here. So then it is going to be display the result. See, when the try block code is not raising any exception, then catch block will not execute. If the try block code is raising an exception, then catch block will execute. Because of that only, when we are writing the try block, we have to write catch block. For one try block, we can able to write multiple catch blocks also. For one try block, we can able to write multiple catch blocks also. Okay, so then this normal flow of execution, this statement will execute normally. The last statement will execute normally. See, now try block is going to be raised, is not going to be raise an error. It is going to be execute. We are getting the result only, and this statement it is going to be executed. Here, catch block statement is not executing. In the other case, 10 and 0, it is going to be raise the error. After raising the error, remaining statements it is executing. See, after raising the error, remaining statement it is going to be executed. So remaining statements are executed. Any doubt? If any doubt is there, let me know.
No, sir.